Hi, hello everyone. Welcome, and I'm so glad you're joining us today on Rand Talks Design. This is a small-time YouTube channel where I upload occasional content about growth and design, and growth design, of course. And this season, I will be chatting with some of the rock stars in the growth designers community once a month. And this month is all about getting a job. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to today's guests, Shane and Treyce. Shane and Treyce, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, Ran. Nice to see you. It's good to see you, Treyce. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I am very excited about this topic today because I feel like we are in a rather sensitive period right now. I know my LinkedIn news and feed is filled with layoff stories. So I think a lot of people have getting a job or is actually actively trying to find a job. So I think this is like the perfect timing. And I know I wanted to reach out to you too to talk about this topic because first, of course, Treyce has posted this wonderful newsletter on growthdesigners.co about his glorious story about getting 4 offers at the same time and have to pick one. Um, he is now at Dropbox. And Shane, I know you've been actively hiring uh, all
Sure
day,
have.
every day. So
Yes,
you probably
let's
have
do it.
lots of insight. Yeah, before we jump right into it, I would like to have you guys give the audience a little brief intro about you. And also, how did you end up in growth design?
Yeah, I can start. So yeah, I'm Treyce Meredith. I'm a product designer on the mobile growth team at Dropbox. I let's see, I live in San Francisco. I've been a product designer for about 7 years, 7-ish years. And for the past probably 3 now, I've been focused on growth. And I sort of found my way to growth mostly by realizing that I didn't love designing things that I couldn't see the impact of. I was kind of frustrated in designer conversations where we were discussing what patterns were the best without any sort of like backing to it. And so I think I fell into growth because I was always looking um, for a better way to measure the impact and sort of prove the success of what I was up to.
Yeah, I'm nodding so hard right
Yeah,
here.
resonates for sure. Um, yeah, so I'm Shane Fontane, product designer. I feel pretty blessed and fortunate to be in design in some shape or form my entire life. Started in graphic, went to web, product design, and yeah, today I'm in growth design. And I think like what excites me most about it is basically what you were mentioning. When I started, like, there's no real way to measure graphic design, and then like there was kind of a way to measure web design. Back then it was like how many visitors like on a stupid little clicker or something. But I always like wanted to like look at design and figure out how to measure its performance. And I think like as an industry, design has always like had this challenge of like, what's the return on investment? Like, how do you prove that? And I think like we finally got to a point where growth design empowers designers to be able to look at their work, put it out there, get feedback, and prove that it's like actually generating money. So it really excites me in all those ways to think about like performance measure design.
Very well said. Yeah, I think why don't we dive into the topic for today, the exciting stuff. So Shane, you mentioned, like we mentioned earlier, that you've been actively hiring for a while now. I'd like to ask you to maybe give us a little bit of overview on what to expect from a growth design interview process. Like, what can our audience expect if they were to apply for a job in growth design, and how is that different from like a traditional design interview?
Yeah, sure. So I think differentiating like product design from growth design is pretty important. Although like I think you can, you can be a growth designer and a product designer, but like I think like a product designer isn't always a growth designer. And what I mean by that, right, is like your product design skill set, like empathy, like learning about like the user, wanting to solve like real human problems and working with teams to like deliver that is like creating net new value and solving new problems. But for growth, you kind of want to have that as like your base already when you're applying for like these jobs. But there's this additional component to it, which is like this measurement, this performance component that we were just like discussing. So when like you're looking for these types of jobs, I think it's like important that you're able to like demonstrate like an interest in business, an interest in business metrics, an interest in curiosity. If you don't even like have like a strong foundation in that just yet, but like a curiosity to learn, any way you can kind of demonstrate that. But the interview process, I could kind of like share like what the interview process looks like for me, like what I'm looking for, and basically when that comes to Grammarly, you have like a recruiter screen. So it's just kind of like important to like really show interest in the role, be excited about it. I know that might sound like a pretty obvious thing, but it's not always that obvious. And sometimes you get a little nervous, so you might like clam up a little bit. So it's really important to be excited about it. Tell the recruiter, exactly what you want from your career. When you're talking to the hiring manager, it's important to like, when you're doing your case study walkthrough, I think this is like an area to kind of differentiate between product and growth, because here's an opportunity to like share like assumptions and like really rough ideas like the teams had before like you actually went into work on the project and like set it out or released it. So yeah, demonstrating like collaboration and how you're validating things is pretty important. Then when you get into like an on-site, you're still going to do like another like presentation usually, and it's like another opportunity to like highlight again, like for me, I think the most important thing here is like really just like connecting your design decisions to like the business, because like in product design, you're always connecting your design decisions to like the user needs, which is still the baseline. But like for growth design, you need to do that, and you still need to connect it directly to the business. So I think that's like a challenge for a lot of designers. Yeah, I guess that's like some things. Maybe I'll just kind of leave it at that for us to kind of open up a conversation about before I go down a rabbit hole of things.
Yeah, Treyce, in your like recent job searching journey, do you see the similar format for the interview process?
Yeah, pretty much. I would say that general like recruiting screen, portfolio review or a case study review, and then on site with another presentation is pretty standard, I would say.
You mean like there's another presentation was on site, but before that there was a case study review as well?
Yeah. So for my presentations, typically, when I was getting ready for the job search, I made a couple of slide decks of case studies that I was ready to present, and then I would show them in the second interview to usually the hiring manager, someone like Shane, and then either usually you would get some sort of feedback from that person, whether it's like you could show a little more of this skill, or it'd be great to show a project that kind of has examples of X, Y, and Z. So then I'd usually take that feedback, either kind of adjust the same presentation that I did, or maybe show like a brand new case study depending on what the hiring manager was interested in, and then present again when you're doing that longer on-site interview.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, I think that's interesting thing to point out too, is that like I don't know if all hiring managers are going to give like feedback on what to present. So if you don't get that feedback, I think it's important for the candidate to like reach out like to the recruiter and ask, what can I do to improve the likelihood of my messaging reaching the audience in like a way that resonates with them, because you don't really know the individuals that you're presenting to when you come on site. And it's so important, and it's such like a big impression that like this is like a good opportunity to also like demonstrate like your curiosity and empathy about wanting to like resonate with the team and do a good job.
Yeah,
So
I agree.
So in my experience, I sometimes I was told to go through either a design exercise or a homework. Have you two experienced that? Is that just something that we variate the process for more junior designers? What do you guys think?
I have done both. In my most recent round of interviews, which was almost a year ago now, I didn't do any. I wasn't asked to do any like take home assignments. I know those have been popular in years past, but definitely there was a lot of kind of like whiteboard exercises or sort of like on-site design challenges that I did in pretty much every interview that I went through.
Well,
Yeah.
even for growth.
Yeah, even for growth, which was super interesting because usually the like problem that I was working through was not related to growth at all, and they were very like the things that are thrown at you are very they range from company to company. But I was definitely doing them pretty frequently.
Yeah, that take home exercise thing, I don't know, I'm not the biggest fan of it. Yeah, right, it takes up like all this time. And anyway, yeah, we had like for our interview, for the interview for my team, we had like a whiteboarding exercise. And I spent a little time like kind of like rethinking it, so it wasn't like, it was like something a bit more generic. And I spent some time like rethinking about like how we can make these like different like wild use cases about like folks moving to like Mars, and like what are like the different business constraints and like all these different things. And this was like all to try to really just get like a signal about like how folks think about design and its connection to business. And then I realized like probably the easiest way to do this is just simply to have like an app crit and replace that with the app crit and just walk through the app. And a lot of folks, when we do like our app crits, right, like we're trying to like establish like who the user is, what the business is, right? We're trying to really like educate the interviewer essentially about like what this product is and how we're going to walk through it and how it's experienced through the lens of like a certain user. So that still like satisfies the need of like the basic like product design skill set, but then you get the opportunity to like see if users, because they know they're applying for a growth role, you get the opportunity to see if they connect to like the upgrade messaging, or they go to explore like like certain like uphook flows, or if they want to like look at like the sign up flow, or like they start to like make assumptions about how the design decision like influences like revenue or like acquisition or something like that. So I found it to be like a really good signal still for both like product design and growth.
Yeah, I think that's a good segue. Why don't we just dive into each round in the interview, and then Treyce and Shane, you can let us know your secret on how to stand out, how to ace the interview round. Um, I I want to say the recruiter screen is usually pretty standard. You tell a story about yourself, like your life story sort of thing. Um, so I do like, I can see though, for people who are more junior or have who wants to break into growth, especially they may not have existing growth design project in their portfolio. And I wonder if any of you have any advice on how the candidate can proceed even with limited exposure to growth.
Yeah, I was definitely this person once upon a time who was really interested in growth but didn't necessarily have like a a case study that was, proper like A/B testing with statistically significant results, or like any of these kind of buzzwords. Yeah, like, I mean, maybe like that's hard to get even now with my job. But I think there's a lot of information online now about like the growth design process, or like certain activities, or what you might expect to do as a growth designer. And I think you can take a traditional product design like case study and put a growth lens on it, and focus more on what happened after the first launch, like what iterations did you make and why, and how did those affect certain metrics. Like, I think even in a project where maybe you like redesigned something that already existed, you can still have that data focused and iterative lens on a project. And so that's what I tried to do at first, as well as just talk to the recruiters about like how excited I am to be a growth designer, and like that these types of roles are exactly what I'm applying for. I think is really important when you're talking to the recruiter.
Yeah, for sure. And that continuous like iteration, that idea of like looking at a piece of work and demonstrating like how you iterated upon it. Yeah, I think that's like a wonderful way to also like demonstrate your skill set and interest in growth, because like growth is a lot of that, right? Like it's a lot of like, try this thing, get some feedback, try it again, get some feedback, try it again, until like you really start to nail it. And I think that could also be like maybe a little bit, I don't know, scary to folks who are like just getting into like product design, because like everything feels like it needs to be like so perfect, and we got to like demonstrate like we had this big complex thing and like we released it and had like a big bang and like, oh my gosh. But like a lot of our work is like iterative design, which is like de-risking like all these like big decisions into like smaller little decisions. So yeah, I think that's like a wonderful way to present your work, for sure.
Yeah, there's so many things I can unpack there. I think even if you don't have the proper growth, whatever that means, experience, you can always talk about one, you're comfortable with non-perfect design, like iterative, like you're okay with shipping something that's not 100%. And you should talk about like you're goal-oriented and always talk about the impact and learnings from your projects. And that prompted me with another question. So Shane, I'm so excited that you're here. Like I wanted to talk to a proper hiring manager for a long time. So like whenever you open a job rec, I'm pretty sure it's the case for Grammarly, because it's such a well-loved tool. You probably have thousands, like if not more, candidate for just one single job opening. And maybe you can, but for most teams, they can't interview every single one. So you probably only have a select few that go through the pipeline. I wanted to know, like, how do you pick the people? Like, what makes a candidate stand out if like everything about their life and their designs is just on paper?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So first and foremost, I'm not sorting through all this. I have like a wonderful team of like sourcers and recruiters who make this far easier for me. Right. And they do a wonderful job getting these candidates in front of me who already like meet the baseline criteria. And we establish this baseline criteria by creating like hiring workbooks. And the hiring workbooks like help the hiring manager like think through what we need in this candidate to like help the team throughout the year. And like that starts to translate to like, well, if this is the type of candidate we need, what type of questions do we need to have answered? Then we put the questions together, etc. And like all this comes together, and then like how we will sell the role and what we're looking for in the role, looking for in the candidate. So that kind of gets like, sorted out at the highest level by our recruiting team. And then when they present like a candidate to me, and then I'm looking at like these few, they're usually of like high quality already. I think like when it comes to the actual like hiring manager interview, and I'm looking for like what stands out there, I think some of the things that like I'm looking for are basically, again, like some of the basics, like excited about growth design, excited about the company, but also like, do they like demonstrate that they can operate within like ambiguity and like drive clarity, right? Because like I think that's another like crazy big challenge that we have in growth design. Like we're always operating in assumptions and speculation and like who knows what. So like candidates that like can like demonstrate like they're good at driving clarity is like a really good standout. Yeah, I think when folks speak a lot to like how they collaborate with like cross-functional teams and stakeholders, and not just say like I like to collaborate, but they can actually demonstrate like what methods and techniques they use to collaborate, because that's such a huge part of being a growth designer, because like we work across the business, across different business units, across different product teams, and you need a lot of soft skills to get these projects done and get people to buy in and feel trust and move forward with things. So candidates that can do that like are like a really big standout. And then like, yeah, those who like know exactly what they want in the career, which is like tough. I understand that's tough, but that's why it makes it like a really good standout, because a lot of folks I think might feel uncertain about being very specific about they want, especially in an interview, because they might feel like that might self-select them out of like the role, and that's scary. But like if you can demonstrate that, that's really probably best for both of us, because you won't end up on a team that won't make you you won't end up on a team that will set you up to like not achieve your dreams, right? So those are like the things that like I look for as like a standout.
Yeah, Treyce, do you have anything to add? Do you do anything special to stand out?
I don't know if I do anything, like I don't have like a quirky thing that I try to do. But I definitely like a question that I've gotten a lot in those interviews is like, why do you want to do growth design at X company? So there, with growth design, like a really interesting aspect of it is that you're going to be trying to get more people to buy subscriptions to a product, or start using the product more and more, or sign up for the product. And so that at times can feel, if you're not like really bought into the product and the vision, like a little icky for a designer, I think. And so a lot of hiring managers that I've spoken to have asked specifically like, why growth here? Like why are you invested in growing X, this company? And so I think having an answer for that is really important, whether you're a user of that product and so you have personal experience with it, or you agree with some policies that company has, or you agree with the mission. Whatever it is, I think having a good answer to that, and being able to, even if you're not asked that question, like say when you're talking to a hiring manager, like I want to work in growth design at this company because of this reason, is really helpful.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, that's like a good one. And like, yeah, it's super good because like I think you point out like the whole thing about like it could be icky, right? Like, I mean, especially like I think when folks come from like a design background, that's also probably inspired a bit by like art or something, or expression. This idea of like how money can kind of like skew that in some sort of way that is maybe ethically weird. But when you believe in the company's mission and you believe in like the product and like how it changes people's lives, like you're inherently motivated or intrinsically motivated to like want to see it succeed, because like like it creates value in the world. Yeah, that's like a really good point.
Yeah, and I think knowing that, for yourself personally, no matter what like policies or like ideas you have around like capitalism or any of these things, like just knowing that answer for that specific company and role, I think is really important.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, that's a very good one. I think why don't we move on to like the probably one of the most important round, which is the case study or your portfolio presentation. I know it can be different based on the organization. It could be like the first round, one case study with the hiring manager, and it could also be a full-on presentation with a panel of random people on the team. So how do we feel about the case studies?
They're so hard to make. Yeah, they're tough.
It's so time consuming.
Yeah, they take a lot of time. I think for specifically for like growth design case studies, kind of what we were talking about earlier with getting kind of the right like the right points to hit, I think is really important. And those I think are slightly different than maybe what like a traditional product design case study might have in it. So the things that I like to have in there are like our hypothesis and what kind of user segment we're targeting. The obviously the results that we got, but then also like all the variants that actually were tested and the specific results that we got, which with each one, or the learnings we got from each one. I think in a traditional product design case study, I've seen people hesitate to show like a failure, right? Like we launched this big thing and maybe it didn't succeed. But in a growth design case study, I think it's actually more important to show that there was some failure somewhere in the process, because it's pretty rare that you just launch an experiment and your conversion increases like 100x. Usually, it takes like a couple tries. And so like showing those tries or showing the failed variants along with the successful ones and talking about why you personally think those are successful or unsuccessful, I think is an important like twist to put on a growth case study.
Yeah, that's the learnings thing I think is like super important too. And I think like this idea of like failure and learnings and like how they're so closely coupled together and how closely like related they are. I forget like this podcast I was listening to, but like in short, what I was listening to is like this idea of growth teams setting the expectation that their value is based on the revenue that they generate and the business metrics that they move. And if you kind of like set that expectation, when you're not hitting those revenue goals, it might appear as if you're not adding value to the organization. But if you also set the expectation that like the growth team's goal is not only just to do revenue, but also to generate new customer learnings, when you don't hit those goals, and as you were saying, like they might be failures, they don't even have to be like spoken to about as failures, right? Because they're already generating value by generating like new customer learnings that you're going to use in like upcoming experiments. So I think it's super important to like think about not only like the business metrics, but also like the customer learnings that you're getting. And like it's fun to like I see like I think like a lot of folks who are like getting started, who think about like their learnings as like, oh, this is what I would have done differently type of learning. But like if you can actually demonstrate what you learned about the customer behavior, so that this way you could run a different type of an experiment using that as like to inform your hypothesis, I think like that's like super strong. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. There's really no failure in growth. It's only learning. Well, if you didn't learn anything, I would say that's a failure. But don't be afraid to show like vulnerability and what did you learn from this failed experiment.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So now let's move on to what happens after the portfolio presentation. So you aced your portfolio presentation. What happens next?
Drink a lot of coffee and get prepared for the marathon.
Yeah. Typically, right, it's like an on-site interview, which is like a whole day with a company. You probably interview with like 6, 7, 8 different people or teams, and you do a lot of different things.
Yeah, for us, it's like and I've tried to like, actually I did like remove some of the process out to try to reduce the anxiety and the time spent. But like it's still a bit lengthy, but it's like I feel like what we have right now is still useful and important. But for us is like once you have the portfolio presentation done, we basically split off into like 2 more one-on-ones. One is with someone from our human insights team, which is basically a user researcher. And then another one-on-one is with a product manager. And the reason why we have these 2 one-on-ones specifically with a product manager and a user researcher is because I'm building the team around these certain pillars. And some of these pillars represent, product, and some of them represent like user advocacy and research related things. So we usually like have someone go through like those rounds to get those signals. And then we also have like a coffee chat where basically it creates like space for the candidate to like take a breather, although I'm not really sure they really take a breather. They're probably still on performance mode. But maybe they can just like ask some more questions of like that's like curious on their mind. And then we also run into like 2 values based interviews, which are like I think they're my favorite interviews, where we basically do like walkthroughs of like folks like career history.
Interesting. I think one of the framework that I do, I think for on-site and especially these one-on-one conversations cross-functionally, they're all different, but they're all the same at the same time. I think what one thing that I always be mindful is try interpret the question and try to figure out what they're really asking and highlight those things and always have examples. So like always tell a story rather than tell people, oh, I have growth mindset, or like just show, not tell. Treyce, I wonder if you have any insights on how to tackle these type of cross-functional interviews.
Yeah. I think most of the time when you're talking to like a researcher or a PM or an engineer, they want to vet if like you're the type of designer they want to work with. And I guarantee you they have like some sort of picture in their head, like you were saying, Rand, of like what kind of person they are or they're looking for. And so I usually try to like ask early on in those interviews, like what are you looking for? Like what values do you need? Like what does your team need? Almost like at the top, if I can get a question in before they start asking. Because I think that's kind of like the open conversation you want to have is like, I'm this type of designer and I value these types of things. Like, does that match up to what you're looking for and what you're interested in? Because I think interviewing is like when you're the interviewer, it's almost always about like de-risking the person you're going to work with. Like, can you learn as much about them as possible before you spend every day with them? So yeah, I try to learn about them too, so I can give like honest answers back and forth. And then on the flip side, I try to just make sure I know the types of things that make me a little different than maybe another designer. And I think in growth, like if you're looking to be a growth designer, things like saying I'm not super precious with my work. I'm excited to work really fast. I'm excited to work really scrappy. I'm not the kind of designer that password protects my files and won't show you anything for a long time. I'm not hiding explorations. Like being really open and transparent, particularly in our discipline, I think is important. And so I try to really highlight that I am that type of person.
Do people actually password protect their files?
I think Figma came out with that feature recently, which is why I mentioned it.
That's funny.
I have not.
I bet there is. There's got to be someone out there.
Yeah, I kind of want to now that I have the ability to. But yeah, I think like just making sure that that person leaves that conversation like excited to work with you as a person, I think is the most important, because at the end of the day, like the hiring manager usually makes the final decision. And so if if you've shown that you're a decent enough designer, you probably have a good shot at a job. But if you can get those other people excited to work with you, it makes the hiring manager's job like a lot easier.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the topic here that Shane touched on earlier as well is authenticity. So I know like it's nice to have a job, like you want to get the job, otherwise why are you interviewing, right? But then there's also that side of things where you don't want to be stuck in a new role that you have to like fake or pretend to be someone else for at least another year. Like a job is a very a long-term investment, so you have to be there for like at least the next few years. And do you really want to pretend to be someone else for that long every day? So I think the other side is just be yourself and also try to figure out in these conversations if this is the team you want to work on.
Yeah, to build on that, I think if you find, I have found myself in interviews where I didn't get to have like a one-on-ones with the cross-functional partners, and I found that to be kind of a red flag, where it seems like the company isn't really interested in getting to know you as a person and your authenticity and like how you all might work together. They're more interested in just like maybe like what skills or experience do you bring to the table, which is definitely like part of it. But so I think as the candidate when you see what that on-site day looks like, to make sure that you're getting what you want out of it. And if I've tried to be so bold to ask to have certain conversations, that usually hasn't gone super well for me. But you can advocate for yourself and ask, like why certain conversations aren't happening, or if you could have them as part of your interview. I think a lot of people feel like maybe that's, you can't ask a lot of the company, but I think that you certainly can try at least.
Yeah, definitely try, right? Like you're never going to get what you don't ask for, like period. And it's like probably again like another like scary thing where like you feel like this can put this thing at risk. But like as you mentioned, it's like you're here to qualify this organization, right? Like this isn't just like a one-way, relationship where like you show up and add value and you get nothing out of it. It's super important to have those conversations, and like, yeah, if you don't get them, you definitely follow up and ask for them, like get all the questions you feel you need answered before, you get to like an offer stage. Because last thing you want is like someone dangling money in front of you and cash buckets are falling and you're distracted by all that, instead of like what really means something to you, and you end up making a decision without the information you really needed.
Yeah, I don't know if like you have dangling of cash, bucket of cash is such a bad problem to have, but definitely agree with you. Use the opportunity before the distraction. Yeah, I guess that's why I never thought about asking for something, like asking the company to change their interview. So that's totally new for me, and I have been interviewing like a lot, I guess. Yeah, so I tend to do better with smaller companies, probably like Grammarly, and less with like bigger companies where they just interview as this generic product designer role. And I remember I was interviewing with this huge company, and I spent like 45 minutes talking about one really complicated product. Like I kind of niche myself in like B2B SaaS space. And then the question I got is, why did you use this color? So of course, I did not get the interview, but I think, Treyce, you mentioned a really good point. Like, look through your schedule, probably LinkedIn stalk the person and see if that's even a match. Because I don't think I want a visual design focused role, anyways. So that's my learning. Well, always learning something when I talk to you guys. And so now we kind of recapped like every round of the interview process. I want to move on to the cash bucket stage. I think that's also important. And I actually reached out personally to Treyce earlier when I was evaluating multiple offers, because he is such an expert on getting multiple competing offers. It is a really good problem to have, but it's kind of stressful. So, Treyce, how do you make sure that you pick an opportunity for the next few years of your life? How do you make sure that's the right one for you?
Yeah, so I think I try to consider a few things. I think the first most important one is just like, did the people you meet, did you like them? Did you have a good time talking to them? Could you see yourself talking to them a lot, like all the time? That's very important. So let's assume that all these offers, like, you liked everyone you spoke to. I think if that's the case, like, first of all, obviously, like, the money that they're offering is a huge component. And I think if you are getting less than what you wanted, you probably will be at that job for a shorter time. So what they're offering, I think, is really good. I like to think too about like how my resume looks and what kind of company I could use more of on there. So if you've worked at a lot of startups, could a big name or a big corporate company look good on your resume? Or if you've only ever worked at like some of the big tech companies, could a smaller company look good, help balance things out? Then I think about, like the type of work that I'm doing in growth. There's a few like areas in growth. If it's monetization or acquisition or activation, like, am I doing that the right type of thing that I want to do? Or even just at a higher level, is it a growth role or is it not a growth role? I think is important to know as well. And then I like to think, like, what am I gonna be designing? And I like the product that I'm actually designing for, and am I excited about that? I definitely think that I've had jobs before where I thought I was going to be more excited about the product and ended up not being. And then that's also been a little bit of a thing that's made me leave faster than I would have liked to. And so making sure that you're excited to do that, like the actually tinker and design that type of product as well. Like you said, Rand, like, if you're working on like B2B SaaS stuff, is that the most interesting thing to you? If you're working on like consumer mobile stuff, is that what's exciting to you? And making sure there's like a match there, that you're ready to take on those challenges for the next, long period of time.
Yeah, that's really good. Think about what type of problem you want to solve and what interests you and how that's going to take your career to the next level. That's a really great framework. You should write another blog article about it.
New York Times bestseller.
Yeah,
I don't know about
that. Shane, I know like culture fit and value fit is very important for you as well. So how do you, is there anything you can add over here?
Yeah, so +1 to everything Treyce already said. I think I have like maybe a slightly different fundamental philosophy about things, which is like, I just assume the money is going to be right. So it's not a concern to me. And if it's not right, then it's already not the right opportunity. So I tend to focus on trying to find the organizations that most align with like my values and what I want out of my life, like how it's going to impact my professional career and my personal life in a way that I see myself living. And that makes it also more difficult to find like that job, right? Because like as more specific you get, right, you start to say no to more things. But yeah, I tend to look at those things. So like if I have a competing offer and I'm looking at two things, like at this point, I assume the money is like within a reasonable range. Most folks, if you're getting competing offers, they're usually pretty close unless you're interviewing for drastically different stages of organizations, like a startup versus like a giant company that's doing really well. But yeah, I think it's always looking about the problem, because besides like spending your day talking to like these people all day every day, you're spending all day every day on a problem, and you have to love that problem more than anything, because the novelty effect of money wears off really quick when you're struggling with getting up and showing up for the job.
Yeah, definitely. We have a little bit time left. I want to open up to the audience, and if you're watching and you have a question for the lovely Treyce and Shane, please leave a comment. I do see one question is really specific about Dropbox, Treyce. I know
Yeah.
Dropbox is like probably one of the most sophisticated growth team out there, right? And I'm sure a lot of people are interested in what you did to land a job there. So anything you did specifically at Dropbox?
Yeah, I mean, I think I tried to do everything we talked about already. But more specifically, like we at Dropbox, when I was learning about the role that they had open, I asked a lot of questions about like the exact type, like the mission of the team, the exact type of work that team was going to do, and then tried to match my case studies to that mission and that team. So, Dropbox is a pretty big company, so our teams tend to be pretty focused. And so I felt like I wanted to match my portfolio as precisely to that role as I possibly could. So, if when you're interviewing, when you're learning about the role, job descriptions can be a little like vague sometimes. And so asking more questions, even if oftentimes like the recruiter doesn't know like all the nitty gritty of those things, but they are very happy to get the answers for you. So I asked the recruiter a ton of questions. They didn't know the answers to all of them. I followed up with an email, and then they got me those answers. And so I think at any bigger company, they're hiring for something very specific. And so then matching what you do to that specificity, I think at least helped me stand out.
Yeah, very good answer. It all goes back to interviews are actually a two-sided thing. You want to get information out of it as well.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions that you always ask to vet the company?
Ooh, that's a good question. I definitely, when I get into later stages like the on-site interview, I do like to ask some more, I think, like challenging questions to the interviewers and see how they react to them. So one that I've asked before is like, can you tell me about a time when your design team like disagreed and how you solved the disagreement like as a team? And I found that sometimes interviewers respond really well to those questions, and sometimes the interviewer gets a little nervous when you ask them kind of to talk about not just the good stuff or not just the basics. And I take that to be like a really good sign on whether if I would like to work there. You know, if that question makes like an IC designer kind of nervous, I kind of take that as a hint that maybe that was an uncomfortable situation for them. If it doesn't make them nervous and they have a just an example on hand, then I take it that that experience probably wasn't scary for them. And so definitely, as you get later stages, asking those tougher questions, I think, is really important.
Yeah, very nice. If you have a question, please leave a comment. If not, I will ask away my questions. I always have questions for the two. Shane, I want to go back to your perspective as a hiring manager. So, is there any tips or insights you could share with our audience today that will help them do a little bit better in their upcoming job search?
In the job search?
Or interview.
Sure. Well, I guess quickly on the job search, know what you want. I'm going to keep always going back to that. Try to get Crystal on that. And then, yeah, for the interview, I think, we kind of like touched upon it, which is like really just be prepared. Things that could also stand out too is like, discussing like observations that you had about the product, because that shows that like you're curious, you're using the product, you have an interest in learning. And it's like a great way to create a bridge, because like you don't know these people, right? And it's important, like it's like the same thing, like you're out somewhere hanging out, right? Like to meet someone, there needs to be like a bridge. There needs to be some way to like create common ground. And like the product is like a great opportunity to create common ground between the two of you. So have a discussion about that, talk about like what you might improve about it or how the experience was for you, and, walk through what that might look like. So I think those are like other ways that like you can kind of catch, the eye of like the hiring manager.
Yeah. What if the person doesn't know what they want to do? Like, for example, I'm interested in everything. I don't know if I still know exactly crystal clear what I want to do next.
That's a good question.
How do we know what we want?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to pretend to be like the know-all answer to that by any means, because that's
You're
like
not?
right? It's like such a big, deep, and complex question. But like, I think we all kind of like have a feeling of what excites us and what we would like to do. Like if we were just kind of given the opportunity, and maybe sometimes that answer is like, I don't really want to do anything. I just want to like sit on a beach, and like that would make me like have a very happy life. But like if that's true and you're honest with yourself, like what does that mean? Like how can you translate that into spending your time doing more of that? Maybe it's not like the standard career path of being a designer, maybe you just have to accept that, and maybe it's something else. Like maybe you're actually like a TikToker or an IG influencer. I don't know. Right. But it's like, it really comes down to being like, I think like honest with yourself about really what makes you excited and things. I think it's also sometimes easier to like be like, this is definitely what I don't want. Right. Like it's pretty easy to probably put a list together of like, I don't want to work for a company like this. I don't want to be managed like this. I don't want to like spend my time like that. So you can always just go like the opposite way and just like put a list together like that. That'll kind of like also help crystallize maybe what you do want, because you'll be able to look at that as a reference point of what you don't want.
Yeah, definitely. I know those. I know exactly what I don't want. Treyce, you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think to figure it out, sometimes you have to sometimes you got to just like do stuff and realize, oh, that isn't what I wanted to do. I thought I would like doing that, but I actually don't. So if you are in an interview and you're not like, you don't have a crystal clear answer, I think tailoring your answer to that company at least is like a good way to at least like do better in that interview than being like, I have no idea, I'm just talking to anyone. Like, say, if you're
That's never
interviewing,
good.
yeah, it's probably not the right answer. If you're interviewing at like a social media company saying that like the next role I want will be designing social media or something, like even if it's simple like that and you're like, I'm just really into this space and this, like, that's what I want to do, I think can be good. And you probably have a list of things that you are interested, or at least even if it's huge, you probably have one. And I think that kind of answer can at least help hiring managers feel like you're not just there to do an interview, like you're actually sincerely interested.
Yeah, that reminds me of a conversation I had with David Hong from Webflow. It's about how to apply growth design principles in your own career. He talked a lot about run experiments on what you'd like to do. Like, for example, you have an inkling on, I want to do social media. Maybe you can see if there's any opportunity for you to do that in your current company, or you can try to do a contracting job. So some small experiment you can do to try to do the thing you think you're interested and see if you actually like it. So plug, go watch that video if you're interested. And I now want to just open up the floor to both of you. So let us know what's the newest project that you're working on, and how the audience can keep in touch with you two. Treyce, do you want to start?
Sure. Well, I'm always working on the Dropbox mobile app. If you download that, you'll see my stuff. Besides that, I have a newsletter called Designing for Neurodiversity, where I just talk about my own personal views on design and what it's like to be a neurodiverse designer. So that's on Substack. If you can search that. That's where you can find me.
That's awesome.
Yeah. He also has a really good talk at Figma Config. So I will link the video in the description as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have as many cool things as Treyce as far as like how to follow me.
Yes,
I guess like maybe you can catch me on LinkedIn. That's probably like the best spot. But yeah, like as far as like things that I'm working on, my team and I, like we work on things at Grammarly, from like the installation flow, from like sign up flows to like helping users realize the value of like premium. So we do a lot of different growth work, but I'm hiring. So if there are any growth designers out there that are interested in joining my team and helping Grammarly bring the value to the rest of the world, which is our mission to like basically improve communication and help each other better understand one another. Give me a holler, hit me up on LinkedIn, and that's probably about it.
Yeah, if you're looking for a job, the other way. I always get this wrong. See, it's mirrored. Talk to Shane if you want a job at Grammarly. I'm unfortunately, uninterestedly neurotypical, but I still can spell. So Grammarly has been very helpful. Whenever Grammarly doesn't support, I just have typo all over the place. So don't look at my Twitter.
Add it to your dictionary.
I've been like asking for Twitter edit button for so long because I cannot spell.
Neither can I.
I can't write.
Great. Let's all get Grammarly Premium and problem solved. All right, thank you so much, Shane and Treyce. I feel like I've learned a lot today, and I hope the audience feel the same. And I know like we'll be super excited if any of you watch this and use some of the techniques that we discussed here to actually find a job. So feel free to come back here and report to any of us if you did that and you get a job. I'm sure like we will be we'll love to know that. And if you enjoy watching this video, please feel free to activate the like button. That's something that I've been wanting to do all episode long. Um, so that's my success metric. So if you enjoy the content, feel free to let us know. And I hope I will see you the next month. It's going to be about user research. So hopefully
Nice.
that's a topic you're interested.
That's the
All right.
goods.
Thank you again, Shane and Treyce. And thank you so much for the audience who have called in. And I'll see you in the next video.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Have a
you.
great day, everyone.
Bye.